News Voice is the world's first mobile app that helps you track where your news is coming from. News Voice helps you track what corporate interests might be influencing the narratives in the news you read every day. Arm yourself against corporate media monopolies by downloading the News Voice app for free using the link right underneath this video. I'm going to go next to James from New York. James from New York, you were on with me. What's going on in New York these days? James from New York, you're on.
Hello?
That's you.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
David, hi. Yeah, my name is James. I'm actually an ER doctor who just graduated out of New York City.
Great.
I've got a question for you. I'm wondering sort of all of these different issues, abortion rights, gay rights, build the wall, any sort of issue like this, I almost feel like we're sort of missing the forest for the trees in the idea that, like, unless we get money out of politics, register everybody in the country to vote, it sort of seems like this system's going to continue to stay broken, and that there's no way that we can fix it unless we fix these sort of like the electoral college, money, and politics.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. So I've said for a while that whatever you care about, whether it's abortion, education, whatever your issue is, gay rights, tax rates, whatever the case may be, there's a package of meta issues that need to be dealt with. It's a more systemic issue that includes money in politics, and combined with money in politics, it's the way media operates, which is very much influenced by money in politics. We have to deal with how elections are done. So we're talking about, electoral college is a problem. 55% voter turnout in presidential elections is a problem. That's a really big first past the post is a problem. Got to deal with that. And then number 3, climate. Climate actually is a meta issue a lot of people don't consider. But if your city's underwater or you're in the hospital because of the pollution in your city, it's hard to be an activist when that is the situation in terms of climate. And honestly, even though healthcare is a political issue, if you don't have healthcare and you're sick, it's also going to be hard to be an activist. So those are kind of like the 4 meta issues that if we really want to fix things, you have to deal with. You're spot on.
Yeah, it sort of seems like it's a beautiful system that has been created to sort of basically distract the everyday voter from these generalized problems and just get them focused on, oh, well, everyone else is lazy, or, you need to just man up and get over your issues. And that it's almost like the rats fighting over the scraps while the 1% just convinces conservatives to vote for rich people keeping their money.
Yeah, a lot of times what I recommend to people is when you're embroiled in you're thinking about a political issue or you're embroiled in a political debate, ask yourself whether you're even debating the right question. So for example, the debate over to what degree can people pull themselves up by their bootstraps. It's a ridiculous debate. We know the answers. We have data on class mobility. We have data on the impact of not having, having hunger or of not having health care and the effect that this has on class mobility. It's the wrong debate. And it might be fun for, people who go and speak at colleges and argue with college kids or whatever the case may be. But we know that these meta issues are an impediment to solving any of these problems when it comes right down to it.
So I guess my question is, how do we solve this? Like, really, how do we even fix this country?
I mean, as a starting point, if we don't actually get competent leadership controlling the White House, the House, and the Senate, and most of the governor's mansions for at least 4 years and make some progress, it's going to be very difficult. And that's, again, the system is meant to perpetuate itself. It's almost like natural selection in a sense. The system survives because it's most likely to perpetuate itself, and it perpetuates itself because it survives. It's a circle.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have all these conversations with different people of different sort of socioeconomic and racial backgrounds, and it just seems like emotion takes over and no real rational discussions take place. It's like your political party is your team, your sport team, and not actually, is this benefiting you? And I honest to God, I'm really in fear on November, and they have this election, and Trump's going to declare victory. And what is, 50 million people or whatever who voted for them? What do you do when your president says, I've won, and if they try and take it from me, you need to take to the streets?
That's my fear exactly. Listen, before I let you go, as an ER doctor, what is going on in ERs at this point? What are you seeing?
So it sort of depends on where you are, but at least around the New York City area, cases are starting to spike again.
Yeah.
It seems like I don't want to single out a single group, but it seems like it's religious gatherings and it's nursing homes, and they're just sort of relaxing standards. And the numbers are, especially around the city, they're starting to rise. And we are either everybody who got super sick already got sick and we're going to be okay, or we're going to do the same thing we did back in March and April. And I don't know how healthcare workers and the general populace, I don't know how we get through it if we do the same thing that happened back in March.
So when you tell someone, hey, you have coronavirus, are people surprised in the sense that they're not connecting their actions to getting the virus?
Well, yeah, sort of. It's also difficult just explaining to people in general that because the prevalence of this virus is so low, that a negative test doesn't mean anything. You could have 5 negative tests and you could still have the virus. That's just based on statistics with the prevalence being so low. It's just hard because it also matters how you do the test. And a lot of healthcare people don't want to shove that swab super deep up the nose. So it's a negative test, but maybe it's really not negative. Yeah, we still have a lot of the tests in a lot of these hospitals are taking 6 hours to come back.
Right.
So you got sitting in the ER for 6 hours. It's almost as if everything we went through in March changed nothing about how we're handling it.
Right.
From leadership in the hospitals to the statewide to the national level. It's really scary, to be honest with you.
Hey, last thing, and then I got to run. You're in the ER, you're not actually doing any coronavirus treatment, right? Like if people are getting anything from remdesivir to dexamethasone or anything like that, that's once they've been admitted?
Well, so usually what happens is if we suspect and they look bad, we'll start a couple of these treatments. But if they're looking okay, you just swab them, make sure there's no other pneumonia or other sort of infection, and then you just send them home with quarantine precautions.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but it's sort of hard to say. I know the steroids help, but it's usually only in sicker people. But the ones that sort of look sick, we're throwing the Mack truck at them because we really don't know what this virus does.
Yeah.
Sad.
All right, James from New York, I appreciate you talking to us today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I love your show.
There's James from New York, ER doctor. We're going to take a quick break. If you are holding, don't hang up because we will go right back to the phones momentarily.